What is going on, guys? So today we're kind of going in depth into the idea of faction wars being implemented in STFC. So would this make STFC more interesting? What would be required? And how would this work from a canon perspective? Well, we're going to explore all of this in this video. Okay, so ultimately, the idea of a faction war and the idea of faction boundaries, take a look here. So the idea of faction boundaries changing could be a good one and ultimately a healthy idea, something that would change the dynamics of the game and the ideal for those who wish to kind of gain more rewards going forward and of course advance their faction rep. So I really hope the developers are listening right now. Okay, so let's take a look from a canon perspective. So the Federation, some would argue, passively worms its way into societies, kind of a root beer kind of way, but there's not much evidence, that the Federation makes cultural kind of genocide, as part of its policy, kind of taking over worlds, pre-warp civilizations, kind of like that. But, there's still kind of this underlying sensation that the Federation does do this passively. They probably poke fun at their cultural norms and, the fact that slavery and, kind of those other ideals are kind of frowned upon. But the Federation does tend to leave folks to their kind of own devices when joining the Federation's sphere of influence. And this can be said for kind of the Romulans and, of course, the Klingons too. So going back to the Federation, Eddington in Voyager, he was an officer in the Federation who later defected, but he said, and I quote, "I know you, I was like you once, but then I opened my eyes. Open your eyes, Captain. Why is the Federation so obsessed with the Marquis? We've never harmed you, and yet we're constantly arrested and charged with terrorism. Starships chase us through the Badlands, and our supporters are harassed and ridiculed. Why? Because we've left the Federation? And that's the one thing you can't accept. Nobody leaves paradise. Everyone should want to be in the Federation. Hell, you even want the Cardassians to join. You're only sending them replicators because one day you can take their rightful place in the Federation Council. In some ways you're worse than the Borg. At least they tell you about their plans for assimilation. You're more insidious. You assimilate people and they don't even know it." So that was Eddington's kind of quote from Voyager. He later joined the Marquis, of course, but it kind of highlights this kind of faction war which is going on in Star Trek canon, and it's something which I think could be brought to Star Trek Fleet Command. But of course, that is, of course, open to interpretation and, of course, opinion. So let's go over, what are some of the requirements for a planet to join the United Federation of Planets? So ideally, this is kind of, there are three kind of main requirements. So number one is sufficiently advanced form of scientific technology, which all kind of planets usually do. There's not too many pre-warp civilizations which were encountered in Star Trek Fleet Command, Star Trek, I should add. So the Federation's baseline is that a prospective member world has achieved some form of faster-than-light space travel ability. So there's a lot of systems, especially in independent space, which could really be utilized in this kind of faction war, which could go on in Star Trek Fleet Command. And I can see it happening in the near future, if that's what people want, of course. But, this one planet, one government kind of policy does apply to the Federation. I'm not too sure about Romulan and Klingon policy in this regard, but the fact is that, they need to be one planet, one government, a system where individual nations have been kind of unified under a single governing body. So no form of caste discrimination is allowed. And, there are kind of other ways which planets can be accepted for membership, but keep in mind that we do see kind of planets in actual Star Trek episodes, which are almost exclusively presented kind of as monocultures. So this is definitely a legitimate argument as to whether, is the Federation or kind of other cultures passively doing this, kind of eroding cultures as a way to kind of domination? This is entirely possible from a canon perspective, but from an STFC perspective, I really want these kind of faction wars to kind of start, first of all, in the storyline, and then second of all, we can kind of see these borders. I'm kind of hoping these borders kind of expand and detract, kind of depending on factions. You can already kind of see it here. So this is what I'd like to see, either through events or other things of that nature. So, like, guys, let me know what you think about kind of faction wars in Star Trek Fleet Command. Leave a comment below. And guys, stay safe during the COVID-19 crisis, and hope you have a great day. All right, see you guys.